Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Friday, June 30th, 2023. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, including my $19 rundown best bet, you can find those at the premium picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games for the final day of June in Major League Baseball. First up, we see the Cleveland Guardians taking on the Chicago Cubs. Cal Quantrill and Justin Steele are your starters. Justin Steele's having a really solid year for the Chicago Cubs. It's tough to go against him in this spot. Facing Cal Quantrill, this is his first start back since May 30th, since his injury. He was struggling mightily before that injury, giving up 14 earned runs across his last two starts against the Orioles and the White Sox. And, I do think that the Cubs will be able to get to him. The Guardians, they've certainly improved their numbers against lefties as of late, but still, this is a team that overall this year and last year even, struggled quite a bit against left-handed pitchers. So I think Steele, in the form that he's in, coming off that London series game, we know it's never easy pitching in London, but he went 6 innings of 1 run, 8 strikeout ball, and a 9-1 Cubs win. I like his chances in this one at Wrigley Field, so give me the Chicago Cubs. Next up is the San Diego Padres taking on the Cincinnati Reds. Should be a pretty fun series. Seth Lugo and Graham Ashcraft are your starters for Game 1. Now, the Cincinnati Reds have been playing in a lot of high-scoring games. We know this pitching staff's not the best, especially because they have some injuries to some key starters. But their bullpen's also, not been the best as of late. And we've seen 11-7, 10-3, 7-6 twice against the Braves, 11-10 against the Braves before that. Back at Great American Ballpark, where it's one of the more hitter-friendly ballparks in the league, I expect a high-scoring game and series here with San Diego, a team that offensively has been so-so this year, but as of late, their pitching staff, especially their bullpen, has just not fared too well. We saw that in that Pirates series where San Diego, even on Thursday afternoon, had a lead early in that game, had a nice lead. They blew it in the end, losing 5-4. They lost 7-1 and 9-4 prior to that. So this team's given up 5 or more runs in each of its last 4 games. We know the Reds bats are red hot. And I do think that the Padres will be able to get to Graham Ashcraft, who struggled in his first start back. He had struggled overall this year, 7.17 ERA, even a steeper ERA at 9.17 at Great American. So give me the over here in Cincinnati, San Diego. Next up, we see the Washington Nationals taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. Josiah Gray and Christopher Sanchez are your starters. The Nationals have been a pretty profitable team on the road this year because you're usually getting a really good plus money price with them. So even though they're 2 games below 500 on the road, that's more than enough for a nice profit, a nice return with Washington away from Nationals Park. And I like their chances in this one, getting a really good price. Josiah Gray is, as much as I do have some regression concerns in his game, it's mostly, most of his struggles have been at home this year, where he's got an ERA at 5.17. But on the road, a 2.48 ERA and a 2.81 ERA in night games this season. So he's pitching well in this situation on the road in a night game. And Christopher Sanchez and the Phillies bullpen, Sanchez wasn't the best in his last game against the New York Mets. He gave 3 earned runs and only 5 innings of work, a home run that went with it, and a 4-2 Phillies loss. And I think that the Nationals have some value here on the road. Played a really nice series against Seattle. I like the chance in this one. Give me the Washington Nationals at plus money. Next up, we see the Minnesota Twins taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Pablo Lopez and Dean Kramer are your starters. I like the Twins in this game. I think we're getting also a pretty good price here with Minnesota on the road. Obviously, not a great series at Truist Park, but not many teams have had great series against the Braves this year. But I do think this is a good bounce-back spot for Lopez and the Twins. Lopez on the road has been really stellar for the Twins this season. He's just really struggled at Target Field, which, obviously, as a starting pitcher, most of your starts are going to be at home usually. But Lopez at home, an ERA above 5. On the road, 2.94 ERA. I do think he pitches pretty well in this start. And Dean Kramer, his last start was solid on paper. When you look, he went 7 innings of work, giving up only 3 runs. But he had 3 home runs allowed in that start, only 5 strikeouts. That makes it 5 home runs in his last 2 games. It's a little bit concerning, especially facing a team that's kind of power dependent like the Minnesota Twins are. For the most of the part this year, they've been a pretty good team in isolated power against right-handed pitchers. Even though they strike out quite a bit, they do have a lot of pop in that lineup. So I don't love the matchup for Dean Kramer. I'm going to take the Minnesota Twins here on the road. The Orioles also didn't play the best series against the Cincinnati Reds, losing that series in the end. So give me the Twins at the plus money price. Next up, we see the Milwaukee Brewers taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. We're going to see Freddie Peralta and Osvaldo Bido on the mound in this one. Now, this is just one of those season series where one team just absolutely dominates the other. The Brewers have done so the last decade plus against these Pittsburgh Pirates, and we even saw it, not too long ago at the middle of June, where the Brewers swept the series at American Family Field. But I just don't love this spot at all for Milwaukee, as Freddie Peralta has to go on the road where we know he has struggled this year in 33 1/3 innings of work, a 5.94 ERA on the road. The Brewers have been so away from home. The Pirates have a winning record at PNC Park this season. They got to stay at home after their afternoon win over the Padres, which was a sweep over San Diego in that series, while the Brewers have to play on Thursday night against the New York Mets, then travel to Pittsburgh, no days off in between, and this is going to be their third straight road series. They played in Cleveland, then New York, and now Pittsburgh. Osvaldo Bido has pitched well so far for the Pirates, even though they haven't won any of his starts. He's been decent. I mean, 15 2/3 innings, 18 strikeouts, a 3.45 ERA. You'll take that all day long if you're the Pirates, who need some solid starting pitching help because of their injuries. But I think the Pirates have a good shot in this one. I like their chances, even though Peralta pitched pretty well against them in the first outing. That was an American Family Field. I like the Pirates' chances in this one. Give me the Pittsburgh Pirates on the money line. Next up, we see the Boston Red Sox taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. James Paxton and Jose Barrios are your starters. A little bit concerning going into this game for James Paxton, who left his last start early against the White Sox, only 4 innings of work. We know James Paxton's had a pretty sizable injury history in his career, so it is a little bit concerning going on the road here against a Blue Jays lineup that has hit lefties a lot better as of late. Not so much towards the beginning of the season, but in the last 30 days, Toronto is number 6 in baseball in team OPS against left-handers with a pretty high walk rate and a pretty low strikeout rate. So, I do like their chances to get to James Paxton. Jose Barrios, he struggled mightily a couple starts ago, but he pitched a lot better after that game. A bounce-back outing against the A's, 6 innings, 2 runs, 8 strikeouts, and a 7-3 Blue Jays win. The Blue Jays have won 4 of his last 5 starts. He's pitched very well at Rogers Center this year with a 2.48 ERA. He has, the last couple of years pitched a lot better at home than he has on the road, so it makes sense. Give me the Toronto Blue Jays on the money line at Rogers Center. Next up, we see the San Francisco Giants taking on the New York Mets. We're going to see Alex Cobb and Carlos Carrasco as the projected starters for now, but there is no official lineup for this game, so we could see a pitching change. Alex Cobb is set to return for Friday, but if he doesn't, he'll probably pitch later in this series after he's coming back from the injury. And, Cobb's pitched better at Oracle Park this year. It makes sense. It's a very pitcher-friendly ballpark, especially for pitchers who keep the ball on the ground, guys like Logan Webb and Alex Cobb. I think Cobb will probably pitch not too deep in this ball game, but I think he'll pitch pretty well. I think good enough for the Giants to win this one in the end. I mean, Carlos Carrasco, a 6.19 ERA overall, and an even steeper 8.2 ERA at Citi Field. I just can't get there with him. Right now, the Mets have lost each of his last 4 starts against the Braves, Pirates, Cardinals, and Phillies. I think the Giants add another one there. So give me the San Francisco Giants on the money line. Next up, we see the Miami Marlins taking on the Atlanta Braves. Brian Hoeing going for Miami. No official starter for the Braves right now, but I have read that Mike Soroka could be the option for Atlanta. For me, with how well these offenses have played as of late, I'm leaning towards the over in this game. The Braves have just crushed right into pitchers pretty much all season long, but especially in the last 30 days. Hoeing's pitched well, but not as well on the road. I do think there's some natural regression concerns in his game overall. I think Atlanta will be able to get to him, but the Marlins offense, here come the Miami Marlins. We think of this team as a really young, pitching-heavy team. You had the Cy Young winner from last year. You had a lot of really talented young arms, guys like Yuri Perez in your farm system, but the Marlins are scoring a lot of runs. We saw that in the the Boston Red Sox series against the Red Sox in Fenway Park. So I think we're going to see a high-scoring game here. Not my favorite game on the board. I'd like to see some more information for the Braves in terms of their starting pitcher, if it's in fact going to be Soroka. But right now, leaning towards the over here in this NL East battle. Next up, we see the Houston Astros taking on the Texas Rangers. We're going to see John Gray and Ronel Blanco as your starters. John Gray had a nice bounce-back outing in his start against the New York Yankees. He struggled minorly against the Blue Jays back on June 18th, but then bounced back, a 5 innings, 1-run performance against the Yankees. I think he pitches pretty well. It was a tough matchup against the Astros, but I do think his bats are going to back him up in the end. Ronel Blanco has struggled as of late, a 4.63 ERA now overall this year. His last 3 starts, and really where I'm the most concerned, is the fact that he's given up a lot of walks, a lot of home runs, 6 home runs in his last 3 games. Good amount of base hits and just sharp contact in general, and all 3 of those games were Houston Astros losses to the Blue Jays, the Reds, and the Dodgers. Now, those are 3 tough teams, but so are the Texas Rangers right now, against right-handed pitchers. So I like the Texas Rangers here on the money line in this first game. Next up, we see the Los Angeles Dodgers taking on the Kansas City Royals. Bobby Miller and Jordan Lyles are your starters. Now, I know this is not going to be one of the more popular picks on the rundown for Friday, but I like the Kansas City Royals in this game, at least on the run line, getting those 1.5 runs. Jordan Lyles in his last 4 starts has gone at least 6 innings for Kansas City. He's given them decent innings. Obviously, it's been a disaster year for Jordan Lyles. He's 1-11 this year with a 6.68 ERA, but he's certainly making improvements. And his last start could be his best of the year, and especially because he was able to get the win for the Kansas City for once, a 9-4 victory for the Royals on the road against the best team in baseball in the Tampa Bay Rays. Really impressive stuff there. And, Bobby Miller has really struggled. I like Bobby Miller's game going forward. He is, he's got a really good velocity on his fastball. He can locate that fastball as well. But there's no doubting he is not in good form going into this start. His last 9 2/3 innings, 17 base hits, 13 earned runs, 2 home runs, and 6 walks against the Giants and the Astros. One of those games, a 15-0 loss for Los Angeles. So not in the best of form. Jordan Lyles is improving and definitely in his best form of the year. And you have the fact that the Dodgers have to go from Colorado and Coors Field to Kansas City. We talk all the time about how the altitude difference and, going from Coors Field to any other stadium in baseball usually affects those hitters, and even the pitchers in the bullpen as well. It's going to take a few games for most teams to adjust to that new altitude. We've seen it, plenty of times this year, and we saw it in the last team that did it, the Los Angeles Angels. They played that Coors Field series against the Rockies. They scored 25 runs in one of those games, 25-1 victory. Then their first couple of games back against the Chicago White Sox, they scored 2 runs, scored 4 runs. Yes, they won the game in the end, but it was really because of their pitching staff. I think the Dodgers offense struggles in this game. I think Kansas City can get to Bobby Miller. I think where the Kansas City Royals have a shot at winning this game outright, but I'm just going to take those 1.5 runs just to be safe. Next up, speaking of Coors Field, we're going to go to the Rockies and Tigers game. We're going to see Michael Lorenzen and Austin Gomber on the mound in this one. Now, I do think the Tigers will be able to get to Austin Gomber in this game, as the Tigers have hit lefties pretty well in the last 30 days. When you look at the numbers, more so in the isolated power department, where they're top 10 in baseball, and the fact that they have a high walk rate, 4th highest in baseball in the last 30 days, and a very low strikeout rate at 16.8%. Those are the things that are really important when you're hitting at Coors Field. If you're putting the ball in play, limiting those strikeouts, getting on base via the walk, probably going to have a really good chance of scoring a lot of runs. And Austin Gomber has really struggled this year. 7.07 ERA on the season, or 7.01, and an even steeper 8.72 ERA at Coors Field. So I think the Tigers get to him, but I also don't love Michael Lorenzen in this spot. He's more of a pitch-to-contact guy. He has the ability to miss some bats. We've seen it as of late. 11 strikeouts and 11 innings of work, but he also does give up a good amount of sharp contact. I do think the Rockies, who hit righties much better than they hit lefties, will be able to get to him. I'm not really the craziest about either of these bullpens, so I'm going to take the over here in Detroit, Colorado. Next up, we see the New York Yankees taking on the St. Louis Cardinals. Matthew Liberatore and Luis Severino are your starters. I like the Yankees in the first 5 innings of this game. I think most of the damage that the Yankees do offensively will be early in this one. I like their matchup against Liberatore, who, the Yankees not too long ago scored a good amount of runs early on in that game against J.P. Sears, a solid lefty option for Oakland. And Liberatore's last 6 1/3 innings of work has given up 9 total runs. Now, 5 of those were earned, 4 of those were unearned, and the defense hasn't helped them out, but still, Liberatore's not really in the best of form going into this game. Severino had a really important bounce-back outing, similar to Domingo Germán, who, both of those guys were really struggling in the Yankees rotation. Germán throws a perfect game. Severino just goes 6 innings of scoreless baseball, but still, really important for Severino. That was a 1-0 Yankees win over a really good Rangers team. I think we see the Yankees have the lead at the end of the first 5. I worry about the bullpen just because I think St. Louis's offense could, show up later in that game. But I'm going to take the Yankees in the first 5 innings on the money line. Next up, we see the Arizona Diamondbacks taking on the Los Angeles Angels. Tommy Henry and Griffin Canning are your starters. Tommy Henry just has not fared too well on the road this year, so I got to take the Angels in this game. Overall, Henry's got a 4.31 ERA, but an even steeper 5.4 ERA on the road. Overall this season, the Angels have solid numbers against left-handed pitchers. Where you see in the last 30 days, the Angels are top 15 in baseball in team OPS, top 15 in isolated power, actually top 10 in isolated power. Pretty high walk rate, decent strikeout rate. I think they'll be able to get to Tommy Henry. Griffin Canning's been a solid option for the Angels in that rotation. Obviously, the Angels' last couple of years, not the best starting pitching rotations, but this year Canning gives them, he's been giving them some solid innings. 65 1/3 innings of work, 62 strikeouts, a 3.99 ERA, coming off a quality outing at Coors Field. Not an easy thing to do to throw a 6-inning shutout with 7 strikeouts in a 25-1 Angels win. I think Canning pitches well in this one. Give me the Los Angeles Angels on the money line. Next up, we go to Oakland as the White Sox take on the A's. Luis Medina going for the Athletics. No official starter for the White Sox right now. Not my favorite game on the board, just leaning towards the White Sox on the money line. Medina his control's been off a little bit as of late. Does give up a good amount of sharp contact. His strikeout numbers have been decent, but 6.84 ERA on the overall this year, just not good enough for me. So just a lean to the White Sox, whose offense has shown some life as of late. Give me Chicago on the money line. Next up, we see the Seattle Mariners taking on the Tampa Bay Rays, the final game for Friday's card in Major League Baseball. We're going to see Shane McClanahan and Bryce Miller on the mound in this one. I don't love this spot for the Mariners against the Rays here. The Mariners have lost 3 straight series now to the Yankees, Orioles, and Nationals. The Nationals lost, definitely the worst one of the 3. And although the Mariners have solid numbers against lefties overall in the last 30 days, I really didn't like their performance against Patrick Corbin, a struggling lefty, in the final game of that series. Patrick Corbin had a really good outing in that one after struggling mightily in the previous game and games prior to that as well. So that's concerning now, facing one of the better lefties in the American League in Shane McClanahan. And I'm also concerned with Bryce Miller going into this start. I watched his last game against the Baltimore Orioles. It just looked like he struggled to find a put-away pitch. You look at the final line, 4 1/3 innings, 3 runs, not miserable, but he had 6 base hits allowed. He had a home run allowed, 3 walks given up as well, and the Mariners went on to lose that game. Miller just really struggled to find that put-away pitch. His pitch count went way up early on, and the Tampa Bay Rays are the type of team that will make you pay if that's the case. The Rays have just been, one of the best teams in baseball against right-handed pitchers for most of the season, so I don't love this spot for Miller or the Mariners bats. The Mariners bullpen was used a lot in the last couple of series. I know they have the day off on Thursday, but still, I like Tampa Bay Rays in this one on the money line, and I would lay on the run line as well. And that's it. Those are the games for Friday in Major League Baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, and don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.